eventually you get absorbed in, and you are Sonic.
What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor Olmstead, and I want to welcome you back to No Repeat, a podcast where we pick 3 songs every week with no repeats and no do-overs to create a perfect playlist for every occasion life throws at you. Joining me are my co-hosts, Tyler Reed.
Everyone knows it's windy.
And Sean Evans.
Do you realize that today we got third in skateboarding? We invented skateboarding.
Calamity. Who got first? Who won?
I do love, though, that Tony Hawk was one of the official Olympic commentators of skateboarding.
That's necessary.
As he should be.
As he absolutely should be.
Was Rob Dyrdek invited?
I don't know. I doubt it. I did get access to Paramount Plus this week, though, and atrocity of atrocities, Ridiculousness, and Rob Dyrdek's Fantasy Factory are both on Paramount Plus, but not Robin Big.
Robin Big? What?
It's a crime.
I was trying to explain to my wife what that show was, and it was kind of difficult. I was like, well, imagine that you just had like a freeform show that you were just given like a bunch of money to do.
It was truly like in the vein of The Simple Life, except it's a professional skateboarder and his friend / bodyguard in a house in the Hollywood Hills. And there is no objective. It's not like we send Jessica Simpson to a farm. It's like he's just living his life.
It's almost Seinfeld-esque in a way that the show is basically about nothing.
Which is fitting for this week's challenge. Tyler, what are we talking about this week?
Oh boy. Folks, we got a real treat for you this week. This week we're trying to find the perfect song for wearing socks. If you want to submit your own challenge, you can send an email at norepeatpod@gmail.com, or you can always DM us, add us, whatever you want to do, on Instagram or Twitter at norepeatpod. So, just for some small context, my buddy Jesse sent this one in. Jesse, notorious troller on Facebook, submitted this as a challenge. One of his most notable features is that when he gets really high, you know it because he will say that he is the basketball, and he'll just type that into Facebook comment sections. So this one's was a real curveball for us.
I mean, with that being said, you know, there was the momentary shock of like, songs to wear socks to. What does that even mean? But then, at least for me, I was trying to think of like, okay, the sensations that come to mind when wearing socks. And it's really twofold. There is the like cozy wintertime sock situation, right? Like you're putting on your good fuzzy boot socks after being out in the cold. And that's like a particular kind of sock wearing that's kind of relaxing, and you know, you're just getting all warm and it's just nice. And then there is what I think is perhaps the second most iconic, cathartic, if you will, uses of socks, which is you're walking around the house in your socks and you're kind of sliding on the floor, right? You know, it's one of the great joys of moving into a new apartment is figuring out how far you can slide on the floor in your socks. And I gotta say, I have real hardwood floors in my living room in my current place. You can get some pretty good slide going. You can really kind of go for it. And so this week, I was looking for a song that kind of fit that yin and that yang of iconic sock usage. I wanted a song that I could get cozy to, but also a song that, you know, if I was dancing around doing a little risky business slide in my socks, it would fit for that too. You know, get that young Tom Cruise action and really just go all out, slide straight across the living room and slam into the glass doors. But that's what I was going for. What were you guys after? What comes to mind for you when wearing socks?
See, I took like a very different approach than you. I've noticed the reemergence of socks in the past few years. And the reason that I I've become very self-conscious of my sock wearing in the past few years, right? Because I remember when we were in high school, which was decades ago now, it was like uncool to wear socks. And if you did, you wanted to wear like slips.
Yes, you had to wear no-shows or, yeah, that was it.
Right. It was very much like the uncool thing to wear socks at all. And now I feel like socks, and I feel like for me, like I have a bunch of crazy socks now. I love crazy socks. I wear them because I wear like, we're going to be going back in the office maybe, possibly, in the fall. And I just wear like chinos and button-down shirts a lot. So socks is kind of like where I can have a little bit of personality. And since I work in food, I just have a bunch of like crazy themed food socks. So I have like a socks that are like cheese sandwiches, and I have like socks that have a sloth floating inside of a tube, and like all kinds of crazy stuff. Like I have multiple pairs of weird camouflage socks. Do I like camouflage? No, not really. Do I like camouflage in nutso colors? Oh yeah, totally. So like, but then it made me think like, I feel like there's a lot of generational divide in the way socks are worn. Like I feel very much right now, if you're into street fashion, and the street fashion might not be the right word. Okay, so to clarify the term, when I mean street fashion, I mean like street photography. Like when you're looking at what people are wearing, like what is pop style. I feel like socks and sandals are a big thing. Not just like socks and slides. I feel like that's a very Generation Z thing to do, which I'm totally cool with. But like that boomer, the railing against millennials railing against boomers by saying like, you're gonna wear socks with your Tevas, that kind of thing is like everywhere now. And so I wanted to find a song that I thought talked about the trends of socks. Like, okay, like maybe you never looked into it, but I feel like I'm like really self-conscious about like what my sock game is.
Okay, I am so with you on this. A few notes on what you just said. First of all, I can vouch for Sean's love of fun socks because when I visited him this spring, we went shopping and we spent, the two of us and our significant others, probably an hour in a store that only sold socks. I mean, it was the longest we spent in any of these little shops in this like retail district that we were in. It was a lot of sock shopping, and they had some really good socks. Also, I will agree, having briefly worked in the footwear industry and then having a boss who was like one of those like old school, like you gotta wear like nice dress shoes kind of bosses, there are like cultures even in the like professional office-y world that get really uptight about this kind of stuff and really like focus on it. And so I have always kind of paid attention to it as well. I don't follow the streetwear scene as much as I think you do because it's just not like a look that I can pull off. But I can vouch that like just pulling up Hypebeast at the moment, which is like a streetwear blog, every third picture is a close-up of a shoe or a sock. There is one company, I'm going to try and link to this in the show notes. I don't know how to pronounce this brand name. I think it's Sweet Coke, but it's Sweet Coke showcases Spring Summer 20 slides in lively mid-season editorial. And it's these bright colored slide sandals with black socks and black joggers. And it's kind of an awesome look. Like, I wish I could pull it off. I am not cool enough for this look. So I get what you're going for here, Sean. I think this is cool.
I got my knee-high recovery socks on right now.
Oh, look at you.
Working at a retail store that like is kind of in like the sort of like weird like shoeby zone where it's sort of intentionally sort of like we basically make shirts that look like old shirts that you would pick up when you're thrifting because he like literally is inspired by like that kind of stuff, so he makes it like our own like spin on that kind of thing. And so that obviously attracts the people that kind of dress in a way that's kind of hip right now, where it's sort of like dressing like our parents would 20 years ago, right? So it's like, in a way, it's kind of a weird vibe, right? Where it's kind of like the stuff that we thought was like corny, you know, like it's actually cool again, because there's lots of people wearing like really like huge white socks. Like white socks was like, no, you can't do that. Like white socks, white shoes, you know, like, and like really like short shorts. You're like, that's you would get laughed at. And apparently that's still sort of like a general like kind of like thought, because like I've definitely seen people be like, yeah, I wore like short, like a 5-inch seam pair of shorts, and someone called me like a basketball guy from the 80s or whatever, and then I got made fun of basically for that. So it's like, so like, I don't know. I feel like there's a pretty large battleground still like in the fashion space, but I think my socks are like pretty standard. I just mostly just have black socks of varying lengths, because black kind of just is unassuming and kind of blends into a lot of things, so I don't really have to worry about it too much. Basically, I have socks for when I'm wearing boots and socks for when I'm wearing gym shoes, and that's really it. So really, I'm very uninvested in the sock meta. But I do follow a fashion YouTube channel called Frugal Aesthetic that basically keeps me in the loop of things. So I try to be hip. But that's not how I decided anything at all. I was in more of like Taylor zone for this challenge, where I sort of was looking for something that was comfortable, you know, like easygoing and like unassuming. Because again, this is like, you know, I could have picked a really great sort of like chill song from one of my favorite artists. You know, I could have picked like literally almost any Fleet Foxes song, but like, am I really going to use it on perfect song to wear socks to? Like, I'm just like, there's a certain air of like, there's a hierarchy here, and I just feel like maybe pulling out the big guns for this challenge wasn't quite the right choice. So I was Googling around for different Spotify playlists. I found a nice long playlist of warm songs, because I was like, yeah, warm. And so I just kind of went through it, and that's generally the kind of vibe that I was going for. And you know, I think I found some.
Well, on that note, I suppose we should just go ahead and dive in. I can go first unless anybody else feels strongly about it. This week I chose Shy by Heather.
In my dreams I see you standing there, but my mouth won't work to say I care. I'm too shy for you, and the way I wanna act with you is impossible. My face turns blue. By your side I feel so damn cool. When I'm with you I get shy.
Heather is the solo project of Los Angeles session musician Paul Castelluzzo. I think I said that right. He's a guitarist and vocalist who has performed on a lot of Latin records over the last 4 or 5 years. And this was one of his first solo tracks, which came out in late 2019. He just dropped his solo debut a couple weeks ago. It's excellent. It's all in this kind of dreamy vein, like this dream pop, like southern kind of beach-soaked sound. And this song in particular stood out to me because I love the almost breakbeat drums on it. I feel like it takes the very like cozy, warm, like chilling in your socks on the couch vibe into kind of an almost dancey space. Like you could kind of slide around the kitchen doing some meal prep, getting your groove on to this. You know, it's not a full-on dance, but it is that kind of like you build up just enough speed to slide over to the fridge kind of vibe, which feels very much like wearing socks to me. And he's got that great slide guitar on the verses that's just real like slip sliding around in the right channel. It's got a real like almost deserty energy to it in some places. I don't know. I'm just really interested in his aesthetic. It's nothing that we haven't heard before, but I feel like it's just executed really well, and he's very good at like layering in such a way that everything feels really lush, and yet you can still hear his really understated vocal performance, which on a lesser project would have gotten lost in the mix of like 5 guitars that you hear on this song.
So if this song was a sock, it would be like an acrylic sock, It has that kind of shiny texture to it, but it would definitely be kind of like clumped up around your ankle.
Yes.
Right? Like it wouldn't be like a high stretch sock. It would just kind of be like a lazy sock.
I'm imagining like remember those socks that were
warm.
really popular in the like early 2010s that like had the bunchiness built into them, almost like leg warmers.
Yeah.
That's what I'm imagining. Like it's bunched up on the top of your Chuck Taylor high tops.
Yeah. And they're a fun color.
Yeah, they're like
I imagine
pink.
like red. Yeah, or something that's like a little bit out there. No shoes. They're just socks. Like it looks like something kind of like maybe tried to eat your leg and then gave up about halfway up your calf.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
just kind of like is in the midst of like recoiling out, but you're kind of stuck, you know? What an interesting song. The bass line is cool. Actually, I feel like if there's one thing that makes this song socky, the quality of sock, it's probably the bass line. I feel like it
I
matches
can barely
up with
pick
the
up
bass
that
drum
bass
really
line.
good. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's kind of subdued. But I like all the effects that you pointed out too. I feel like the song is very well produced. Everything, it kind of has some Beatle-y, Beach Boy 60s vibes to it, which is cool. Some like psychedelia, like old Unknown Mortal Orchestra kind of feeling. Now when I heard
Yes.
this, I was like, this is really good. I like this a lot. So yeah.
I was trying to figure out who he reminded me of. That's who it is. It's Unknown Mortal Orchestra.
The boom bop was the biggest point of contention, I feel like, in this song. I was really waiting to hear how you were going to explain that part of it, because I feel like a lot of the song really kind of fits in probably with the general cozy sort of warm sort of, you know, like you're like, yeah, it feels like it's a sock. But I think the thought of, you know, the sort of the swoop the whoop, the slitty slide element, I think, you know, I was not thinking about that. I think I was trying so hard not to like give into like free association that I was like, I could barely like God, just think of just some core words, and that's gonna be what I'm gonna focus on. But you've really fully explored the colors, the textures of a sock. But yeah, I think this is definitely a song that's very unassuming, but definitely would be a song that I would Shazam.
All right, who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
All right, Sean, what you got?
So this week my song is 21st Century Hobby by Oscar Lang. I probably found this song on like one of my Spotify Discover playlists like 2 months ago, and I've just been absolutely loving it. Full disclosure, I really like songs that have some sort of social commentary to them, and this one really does, and that's fine with me. So I just want to say that. But that said, the social commentary is exactly what I wanted to talk about with socks. You guys kind of got it when I was talking about it in the beginning, that I noticed that there's a sock culture, right? It's because there's a shoe culture. And with that, like, it's kind of hand in hand, more probably subdued, that the sock doesn't really take as much. I doubt anybody's buying a $700 pair of socks who's not like, you know, maybe there, I don't know. If you are, hit us up. I'd like to know what your opinions are on
they're buying
socks,
a $2,000 pair of shoes
Right.
for their $700 socks.
Well, it's like buying a sports car and putting cheap tires on it, you know. But that said, the reason that I absolutely love this song, I mean, lyrically, I think I like the lyrics a lot. It's about like consuming as a hobby in the 21st century, which I think is really funny. But I love all the fuzzy textures. Like, that was one thing that I really wanted to find, because I thought about like what do I like about socks, and I like soft fuzzy socks. And I wanted to find something that kind of gave me that same feeling to my ear socks kind of thing. And this song really did it for me. I like his voice. I like the guitar solos. I like the fuzz kick when the chorus comes in. I like when you listen to the beginning, there's an acoustic that's kind of cool. And then everything kind of builds up, and you have all these layers. I mean, there are 3 guitar players and a bass player and a drummer in this band, so of course you're just going to have all these layers that come together. But I feel like that's kind of what I like. If I was going to describe what this song was like for me in terms of a sock, it definitely is a sock with a shoe on. And I'm going to go with... I have this pair of burgundy Under Armour, like, mid-calf socks that I absolutely love. I have 2 pairs of them, and I kind of, like, covet them. The days that I wear them, I really try and, like, put together a little outfit for them. I'm going to go with, like, the classic sport sock, but in a not-so-obvious color like black and white.
I totally buy your description of this sock with this song. This song, I think, fits that description in that it is like a classic, but with a twist. You know, on first listen, it felt like any other kind of fuzzed out alt-rock song. But the longer I sit with it, the more impressed I am with the amount of stuff going on. Like you said, like, just the sheer amount of guitars on this track, it really, like, lends itself to repeated listens. There's also some really well-placed synth beds in here that just add a little bit of volume to what would otherwise be a little too grimy. Like, it presents a real, like, understanding of pop sensibility that I feel like sometimes we lose on these, like, grimy guitar rock bands. Like, I think that's part of the reason I love the new Royal Blood record so much, is they're really, like, leaning into their pop sensibility. And you can hear that same thing going on here. Like, he clearly is a strong songwriter who is now, like, packaging up a song with enough other stuff to, like, just push it that extra mile. His debut album is coming out in 2 weeks as we record this, and I'm really excited to give it a listen because I think he's got a lot of promise.
I feel like this song is a more sort of like a vintage, kind of like how I was talking about, like, the people who come into my shop, where it's like it would be like a white sock, like you buy it, you get it from your dad kind of sock.
Like a white tube sock?
Yeah, like a white tube sock.
I
but
see
like,
that.
you know, but like it looks good on you though. Cuz there's a lot of ways it can look bad. But no, you know, sometimes there's a song you just hear and you're like, this is 100% a Sean song. This is it's which is not bad, and I feel like I've said this so many times, but there's just something about your curation that just gets me every time. I'm just like, maybe it's because I'm going too wide. But anyway, were you gonna say something?
I was gonna say, I think it's like the modern iteration of the wall of sound is what he likes. Like, he likes a wall of guitar-based sound. Like, I feel like maybe this is a future episode topic. We do like a deep dive on Phil Spector and the wall of sound. But I think that's part of what makes a Sean song, is like, it's got to be big.
Oh, yeah.
And this song definitely has that.
And if it's fuzzy, even better. Ideal, even.
Yes.
And there's a lot of... I feel like there's also I don't know, I'm not always a super huge fan of like the vocal, like, reverb, or whatever the kind of the vocal production is like. I mean, I like it here, but I do feel like sometimes... like especially on like Lucy Dacus's new album, there's a lot of like reverb on it that like kind of like is a little too much. So I feel like I think this kind of like is a good package of like all those sounds kind of like all kind of working together in a way that feels really coherent. And kind of like Taylor was saying, that like there is a lot of interesting small flourishes that like I picked up on after a few listens that really kind of just give it an extra little bump of like, oh, this is more than just, you know, like, this isn't a pop punk song. This has a little bit more nuance to it. It's really interesting. And for being only 18, I think that's really cool. And it's interesting to see the perspectives, because, like, we're old now. We're certified old. Like we're out of, and it's been more readily apparent recently that I'm like, oh man, I'm not necessarily feeling out of touch, but I'm suddenly noticing other people's youth and like how they're interpreting the world is so much different from ours. And so like basically the entire commentary of the song is basically like the world that we have more or less created by like just like digging into these social media apps. And like, oh my god, it's sort of me that we also have to we have to monetize all of our hobbies, us talking about our podcast right now. No. Anyway, I think it's fun. I think it's interesting, fun commentary. I think it's right up Sean's alley, and it's a song that I also think is really fun and interesting to listen to. And I guess tangentially related to socks. Socks are a hip thing again. Sure, let's do it. I'm in.
All right, Tyler, that just leaves you. What do you got?
This week I chose Morning Song by Leon Lohman.
I see your dead sleeping. Baby, can it do? Then I see you. This time I know we're gonna make it.
So what's super fun about Leon is that he was a painter in like the 1970s, and he just sort of he listened to Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Lucky Man, and I guess he decided to just go out and buy a synth because he just really loved it and just was just inspired by it. And so he just started making a bunch of stuff. And so really his career really didn't take off. He didn't really go anywhere. Like, because like if you like type his name into like the Google, there's no Wikipedia entry on him really. But what happened is there was a small, I guess it was a company in Amsterdam was finding like their job, or like what they do is they take like old music that like maybe didn't get full releases or is sort of undiscoverable, and they just sort of found it, and they sort of like do vinyl pressings and stuff like that. And so like just kind of reading a little bit about like sort of like his influences, it seems like eventually his stuff was pretty well regarded. And let me find the exact like combination of things that like was like the inspiration. His unique blend of lo-fi, synth funk, and surf ambiance, and like those combinations of things, you listen to this song and you're like, it is pretty much all of those things. And I think all of those sort of like genres kind of like smushed together are really kind of the vibes I was kind of going for, because I really think I wanted something that felt warm, sort of almost nostalgia tinged. Because I feel like you want something that's also kind of easy feeling, because really socks are there for the utility. They're there for your comfort. They want to have your back. You want to feel like, like a sock is never going to betray you. Unless you get a hole in it, but it's like, I don't know, there's just something about sort of the comfort of this song. It's not, doesn't demand too much of your attention, but has enough kind of going on. There's certainly I think what's really fun here is, like, if you listen to Lucky Man, listen to this song, you're like, oh, there's a little bit of like acoustic guitar, and there's just some beautiful synth passages, and you're like, I can see the exact like parallel here. And so I don't know, I just feel like maybe it's because of the era that we grew up in, where there's some level of like nostalgia also means like warmth, but I guess also kind of during that time it was kind of like the recording quality kind of also evoked that sort of feeling. Because I was trying to go back and I was trying to think of like, well, why did these sort of things feel warm? And I guess it's sort of like this thing we sort of built up about the sort of the audio quality of it. But yeah, I mean, honestly, this was just a chill song that was not too assuming and just made me feel good. Just like putting on a fresh pair of socks in the morning.
The weird thing about that is I feel like the jury is out on socks. Like, it's not... sorry, that came out wrong. The jury is not out on socks. And the reason I say that is because today I was watching the Olympics and they had the men's triathlon on. And like a little known fact about triathletes is that they actually don't wear socks. For any portion. They have specially made shoes that have liners on the inside that don't require you to wear socks. And the whole premise is you don't have to change clothes. It makes you that much faster. Like Zoot is a clothing company. They've been around for a while. They make shoes specifically designed for triathlons, but they also make running shoes that you can wear sockless, that they market for runners, which I always thought was kind of interesting, this idea that you can just slip on it and you're ready to go without having to worry about getting blisters and stuff. Because if you're hiking or running or doing anything, or you just had a bad pair of dress shoes, that's always where I feel like I get you get like a crappy pair of dress shoes, your heels are going to get eaten up and your pinky toe's going to like fold in on itself. This is working catering. Get a bad pair of black dress shoes. I promise you, that'll be the last time you do that. Right, exactly.
Or just be a groomsman at an outdoor wedding in the summer.
Oh yeah, terrible. But yeah, no, it's interesting to say that. I feel like I got a lot of old school vibes, and I didn't realize that was actually what was happening here.
Yeah, I love the story behind this song. This also hits me right on topical because I watched something that I'm considering making homework for our next Billy Joe Armstrong's Middle School Notebook. There's this new docuseries on Hulu called McCartney 321, which is 6 30-minute installments of basically producer Rick Rubin and Paul McCartney just standing at a mixing desk with the raw files from a bunch of his songs over the course of his career and talking through various creative choices. And they talk about a couple songs on Abbey Road and how the Beatles were there, they're working on the album, and then they hear that there's this guy upstairs who has this new instrument, and he's, showing it off to the execs at Abbey Road. That guy was Robert Moog, and it was the first Moog synthesizer. And they played with it, and they were like, oh, we absolutely have to use this. And so they got taught how to use the Moog by Robert Moog. It was like one of his first prototypes, and that's what ended up on Maxwell's Silver Hammer and a couple other songs on Abbey Road. And just watching like Rick Rubin's face drop as he hears this story, and he's Rick Rubin, he's worked with everybody, but he's just like, oh my God. And that's kind of what I love about this specific period of music, like this really late 60s, very early 70s era, where like synthesizers were truly a novelty. And you would just put them on songs, but they wouldn't like be the star of the show in the way that they would when you get to like disco. And so you could take what was normally an acoustic folk ballad like this and just add a little bit of Moog on it, and all of a sudden it's this totally different thing. And that, I think, is very appropriate for this challenge because it creates this kind of like, I don't want to say like coziness, but almost like at ease now. Because at the time, I'm sure it was very arresting to hear the Moog. But now it's like something that has become such a part of the culture that we just don't even take it for a second glance. And I feel like that's a good way to think about socks, too. It's like a lot of people... I know that was a weird transition, but hear me out. I think one of the things we've learned this week is that a lot of people take for granted, oh, well, I just put on a pair of socks. And all three of us have talked about, like, oh, no, there are, like, a lot of choices involved in that. And there are fashion elements, there's utility elements, there's color, there's shape, there's cut. Like, when you find the perfect pair of socks, I feel like it fits like this Moog does into this song. It suits the mood perfectly.
In this essay, I will talk about how the Moog synthesizer and socks are more similar than you might think.
Merriam-Webster defines sock as...
You got this little sock, you got this bigger sock, you got this other sock.
This sock is too big!
Don't forget, though, we haven't even talked about, like, the fun part about socks, which is, doing that kind of action.
The puppet, you're
the puppet,
right.
The sock puppet kind of thing.
Way to go, Bo Burnham.
Right. I want to like soundtrack this one real quick and just say that the video for this that's sock related is basically just, it's like a slow pan of a bunch of places where socks are just laying on the ground and feet are kind of like doing something, and you're kind of led to believe like what's happening. Like maybe there's a pair of socks on the ground, then it kind of like pans slowly and it's somebody doing like a modern dance, but you can only see them from like the knee down, right? And then the next one is like two pairs of socks on the floor kind of on top of each other, and then it pans up real slow onto a couch, and there's like two people's feet are kind of like, you know, mingling with one another, and you kind of get the gist of what's happening there. But it's just kind of all kinds of like artistic-y sock thing. I even probably just made somebody throw up by describing that, but hey, we're gonna talk about it on here.
It was a sweet serenade of feet, of toes.
Well, see, now you've really pushed me in a direction, because a friend of a friend directed a film that I absolutely adore called Last Summer. It's from 2013. I'll link in the show notes to the IMDb for it. It's on streaming some places occasionally, but it's a really interesting queer romance film about two high schoolers. One of them is going away to college and the other one is staying in their small rural town. But the way that it's shot is like so focused on textures, and you really get like the sense of like the last week of summer, and it's just so hot and it's like completely unbearable. But there's this really great scene where they're just like laying in bed together staring up at the ceiling, but the shot is focused just on their like shoes, and you see like their shoes on either side of the bed, and then they like slowly move closer to each other, and then it just like ends. And it's like that shot is exactly what I feel. It's like that kind of like, you know, just the slight suggestion of romance, you know? Anyway.
Well, with that deep insight into beauty, B-sides, anybody got some? Open up your drawer. Let's dig around and find some cool socks.
I have a few. I have Let Me Know by Surfaces, which is a cool song, but I feel like Surfaces is just getting a little too much play right now. They're very like TikTok-y famous right now, and I'm just wanted to try something different. Similarly, Fumari by Peachtree Rascals, a band who I can't decide if I love or hate. And Interstellar Love by the Avalanches and Leon Bridges. I love the Avalanches. They're great.
I think Radiohead as a band would be an awesome... They're just a good sock band. And any of their albums, they're just good for socks. I'm trying to think, like... I had some other ones, but now I'm totally blanking on what they are. Whatever, I'm just going to go with Radiohead. They're a great sock band. Just check them out. Put on some socks. Maybe some shorts. Get cozy in a nice blanket, because you're probably going to feel bad about yourself.
You know, I really just did a lot of, like, classic songs. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, Domino, Sea of Love, Love the One You're With, Never Going Back Again. But also, Here on My Own by Swarty, Look at the Sky by Porter Robinson, The Steps by Haim, and then Ramsey Lewis did this incredible cover of Dear Prudence. Actually, he has an entire cover of the White Album in like his organ piano style. Very good.
Well, Tyler, if people want some sock recommendations from you, where can they get those?
Hey everybody, you can find my design and illustration work at rudepets.club as always. Find me on socials as Rude Pets Club on Instagram and
Sean, if people want to litigate the socks versus sandals debate with you, where can they do that?
You can find me on Instagram at TellySean.
And I have many opinions about sock length. We can discuss those on Twitter at TC Olmstead. And all these songs will be on the official No Repeat podcast playlist, and we'll be back next week with another episode of No Repeat.